Hey, family. My guest today is Denise Jean Gregg. Now, Denise is a warrior for truth and love, and she is also the Chief Operating Officer of AppleOne Canada. Prior to her 18 years with AppleOne, Denise was a life coach, and so much of what she's learned in her life and her journey are fueling what she's doing from an executive perspective today, as well as what helped her to be such an effective life coach. Currently, Denise is writing all of this down. She's been journaling like crazy through COVID, and she's putting together a book that she'll be sharing with us. I'm looking forward to sharing it first with you before it gets published. But right now, let's just have a wonderful conversation with Denise. I know you're going to enjoy and learn from this conversation.
Joining us right now is one of America's most successful female entrepreneurs.
Special guest speaker today, the first African-American woman
to own a billion-dollar company. Her name is
Janice Bryant Howroyd. She's the founder and CEO of
AppleOne is one of the largest staffing companies in the United States.
She's now ranked by Forbes as second wealthiest self-made African-American woman in America, behind only Ms. Oprah Winfrey.
And she spent almost 40 years helping others find work.
Janice, great to have you on the show.
Wonderful to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Denise, what's happening in Canada?
Hey, Canada, great. November, winter, nutso, COVID. Oh my God, we're in another lockdown. But you know what? Lockdown for me is a mindset that I do not have. So we are busy, we are thriving, and you know what? You got to make the best of it.
Well, I remember you being a little girl, and lockdown was not what you did then either, even on punishments.
And I was in punishment a lot. You know it.
Nothing's changed there, girl.
No.
But this has got to be really crazy for you, because anybody who's following you on your socials, and I mentioned them in the intro, they know that you've had some really crazy, terrific trips, and you enjoy getting out and about, spend a lot of time with your mom. How are you living through that? I mean, geez.
I have to say that during COVID, if my two favorite hobbies were baking banana bread and doing puzzles, I'd be like wildly entertained. But you know my passion is travel. It's been a really crazy year that I haven't gone anywhere except for Cabo in February. So I'm traveling through experiences with people. I'm traveling through my old photos. I'm traveling through memories. Traveling through my mother, who is entertaining everyone. And I think everybody needs a little slice of Mama G, because she tells it like it is at 9.
She really does.
She really does. So, you know, for me not to be living in my passion, which is travel, it's really, hey, you got to figure out a different way to live. And I will travel again. We all will. But this year's been very, very different.
You know, you talk about, there's so much to share here, but one thing I really want to get in on is Mama G, because you talk about how she is so unedited, right? I love that. She's never been edited. People would think that because she has some challenges with dementia, that this is just a result of that. But my sister-in-law, which she told me, I'm not an in-law, I'm your sister. My sister has always been unedited. Yeah?
Absolutely. She's a pistol. And I think one of the things everyone loves about Mama G is, you know, she tells it like it is. She doesn't care. She's 91. She's dropping the F-bombs. That's her new hobby, it seems. And, you know, she kind of went from kind of whispering the F-bomb to like letting it fly. And everybody loves it. You know what? I think, especially this year, everyone needs to laugh.
And she trolls for men, right?
Oh, my goodness. You know, it's funny. I call her every night. Every night I say, you know, what's happening? How was your day? And she said, well, I didn't get engaged. I didn't get married. And I didn't even get a boyfriend. Like, she says that every day. And she's like, oh, well, maybe tomorrow. And she does troll that place for men. And I tell you that every time an eligible senior who especially can, you know, walk on their own and drive a car, like they're all like on him, right? And my mom's like, those bitches, I'm fighting for him. And it's scary stuff. So.
But I mean, Irene follows the tradition, I think, of women Howroyd from the UK. Folks don't know necessarily that that Irene, your mom, and Bernie, my husband, brother and sister, were born in the UK. Now, she comes from a line of women who really have spoken their minds, and you and I being you know, somewhat liberated. Yeah.
Liberated, yes.
Yeah, well, we can honor that. What are your earliest memories of your grandma? Because Irene sounds like a repeat of her when I first met her, Grandma Lizzie.
Well, Grandma Lizzie, you know, we used to almost every year. So we either every year went to England to see my grandmother, or we came to LA to visit Uncle Bernie. Two very different trips, let me tell you. But one of my earliest memories of my grandmother was, and you'll know this, I always sort of envision her sitting in the corner in her chair. And as
with her crisp locked up in the cupboard.
Oh yeah. And you know, like I was always breaking into those because the crisps were my favorite thing. And the fact that she grew up learning to chew everything 100 times.
Yeah.
And as a little kid, I would stare at her as she was eating because she was such a slow eater. And I would try and eat that slow, which never worked, especially when I stole her crisps. But I remember as a little girl, we were there for 3 weeks, and I said, Grandma, do you wish we were staying another 3 weeks? And she said, no, I'm good. And that's Grandma Lizzie. She did, like, you know, 3 kids running around in her little house with my mother. She was like, that's enough. 3 weeks is enough. Thank you very much.
She was blunt. I remember when I first visited the UK to see her, and I was Bernie's girlfriend. And I asked her 2 questions. I told her that my mom had raised 11 kids, I thought successfully, but I'm open for advice. Should Bernie and I have kids one day, and what would her advice be? And she said, your children more attention pay to what you do than what you say. Then I thought, we're rolling here. This is good stuff. And she put some rhyme on it. Denise, I said, now, you know, if Bernie and I have kids in the US, they're going to be Black. She paused, and I thought, I've offended her. She came back at me. She said, oh, would they now, love? Wouldn't now Burnett count for anything? And she went, and that was how she was. And when I met Irene, there was no shock in meeting her, because Irene is very much her own person. She is very well groomed by a mom who was quite liberated in thought and comfortable to express her opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no filter in the Howroyds. There's no filter in the Greggs. And, you know, growing up with my mom, you had to stand up to her. You just got railroaded. So I like to think I am who I am, having to stand up to my mother. And so many things that she wanted me to do growing up, I refused. I wouldn't ride a bike. I wouldn't wear jeans until like a certain age. I wouldn't be a girl guide because she wanted me to. And I just, you know, was so stubborn in that regard, but I felt like that was the only way to stand in my power. And she taught me that. So it's pretty cool.
And that's so important because, you know, Denise, so many of I call our listeners family. Welcome to the family, Denise, again. So much of our family are young women. And many of the questions I get are women in relationships with their parents, in relationships in particular with their mother and with society at large. And I could hardly wait to get you on here because I've watched you grow up. What do you think, though, was important for you in how you've been able to keep a great relationship with your mom and still stand up to her? Which, by the way, you could substitute mom for boss, for friend, for significant other, whatever. But for people who are in there with their moms right now and quarantined with or without them, what was it?
Standing up, I still, I speak to my mother every day. She's in supersonic lockdown, so I can't see her as much as I want to. But, she has changed in that growing up, she was the warrior for me. And yes, she does have moderate dementia. I've now taken the place of the warrior for her. So we still challenge each other, but now, I have to stand for her because she has great long-term memory, short-term memory, not so good. I take care of all of the essentials for her and I stand for her. So she taught me and now I stand. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but
it so does. It so does. When you were having those challenges with her guiding you one way and you going another, did you ever feel that you had to compromise love in order to stand for yourself, even as a youngster?
I guess as a youngster, I never really thought about that. It was really just, there's finding a place in your family. So I'm the youngest of three. I'm the only girl of three. And I have this, my dad, as you know, the sweetest, kindest man on earth. And my mother, all she cared about was world domination and, being who she was. So it's always finding your place. And I think that, I just had to keep fighting all the time. And she taught me that. But it really wasn't, I really didn't think about it as in terms of love. It was really just finding my way, I guess.
Can you remember, Denise, when you first realized that you were an adult, not the adult in the relationship now, but an adult? Can you remember that and what that felt like in relationship to, now your circumstance was kind of Norman Rockwellian ideal in that, number one, you grew up in Toronto, and while it's an incredible city, it still had a lot of community, your neighborhood. You also had a mom and a dad in the house.
Yes.
But you were a bit of a rebel. Can you remember what it felt like to think the first time, I'm an adult? I mean, did it happen with your birthday and now I can drink in front of you, or how did it go?
An adult. It might have been when I bought my house, my first house, and I was 28, and that really felt adult to me. And I'm always joking and learning and and somewhat being immature. So that adult thing, I never really felt it, especially turning 19 or 21, that type of thing, or even finishing university. Or traveling. I think it was buying my first house, because, you stand in this property that you own and you're like, wow, okay. And that comes with a lot of responsibility. And there's a difference, when you're under your own roof, and that's a lot of responsibility. So I think that was my big kick into adulthood.
Did you ever once question your decision to step out on your own? And I ask that because you're from a very close family, mine.
Yeah. Yes. No, not at all. It was time for me. It was time for me to really own something that was totally mine. So
did it frame your thinking differently? Now you're this adult, you got this house. Did it start to evolve your personality or frame your thinking in a different way?
It framed my thinking in that it added a layer. It added a layer of responsibility for relationships. It added a layer of, I couldn't just drop everything and go live in another country. I could, but it really felt for me like this was, it really grounded me. And that comes with pros and cons, right? All of a sudden you have all these responsibilities, financial responsibilities, looking at where you work, what you do, and it grounds you in a way that sometimes you feel like you have less choices, but it also is wonderful to experience that level of responsibility.
Well, you talked about like, okay, you couldn't go anywhere. You're welcome to the U.S. anytime here, right?
Yeah, of course.
You know, I'm sitting in your USA home right now.
Yes, I do.
What are you guys thinking about the U.S. right now? We're just making our way through an election, and I think the whole world kind of has been watching, well, for 4 years what we've done, maybe 8, but in particular this last election. Talk to me.
Oh my God, that's a loaded question. We're kind of like,
we go there, Denise. We go there here.
Wow.
We go there here.
Okay. Well, and again, I don't want to get too political, and this is only coming from me, obviously, but I talk to all my friends and family, and we talk about it, and we kind of look down at you guys, not look down, but again, we're north, you're south.
Ouch, ouch.
Right? Geographically, but we're just sort of watching and waiting and crossing our fingers that the U.S. finds its way, if that makes any sense. Like we don't have, it's really hard to watch something that you have no control over.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's so impactful to your everyday.
It is. And so I have never watched debates more closely, because I've never really been a hugely political person. I have never discussed politics so much in my life with everyone I know. I have never been so personally involved in an election in a thought process ever, because we really were holding our breath to see what would happen. And we have seen from the past that please don't make assumptions, because you think something's going to happen and then it really didn't happen that way. So no one could make any assumptions, and we would really just were holding our breath. And I have so many friends and so much family in the United States. I just want I want you guys to ground and rise. So it's been hard. It's been hard for all of us here in Canada to watch something that we have no control over. And you're so close to us, and we depend so much on you, that we are invested, even though we have no control over it, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And, me sitting here, always having been a patriot and a proud citizen of the U.S., regardless of my own civil rights journey within this sometimes and in some ways dysfunctional country, have had a certain sense of pride as I travel the earth that the U.S. is looked up to. Now, I kind of want to sometimes forgive us for being a relatively young democracy. On the other hand, it's a real difference for the first time, even to hear you sit here and say, we so want for you to rise and ground yourself. That's weird. That's like,
is it?
Yeah, that's like the hot chick getting told, I'm waiting for you to clean that booger, baby. but to bigger degree. And in some ways, when we think about our democracy here in the U.S., we're seeing many of the elements, you talk about grounding, we see many of the elements of how we're designed as a democracy and as a government being challenged right now, not just stretched, but challenged. And you talk about learning not to assume things, not to be assumptive. There were a lot of assumptions made about where someone would go within our democracy that now we don't have room for because it's not written out that way. How do you look at our form of government and yours? By the way, Trudeau has thrown some shade at us. If you see him or the missus, tell him we got it.
Yeah, I think one of the hard things about I feel Canada is so inclusive. I feel like Canada is really connected. And I think one of the hardest things for us to watch what's happening right now is seeing the disconnection of sort of two different modes of thought. And really, like, again, it's never been so divided, and you really find people are either standing here or standing there. Whereas I don't find Canada as much that way. We really are more inclusive for that. So it's yeah, he threw some shade. But it's you got to understand, it's hard. Like, the entire world is watching. The entire world is watching because we have to see what's going to happen, and we have no control over it. It's really it's like, I don't know how it must be for you, but it's like this.
I had someone tell me, a Canadian woman business owner who's a friend and I have mentored from time to time. We had a conversation last week, and I'm laying in on Canada because, I mean, to your point, geographically, we are so connected.
Yes.
And from a military perspective, we kind of are Canada's military in terms of how close we are, and you're ours, but we invest a lot more. I think that she said something that really, really deserves a bigger conversation than just between her and me. Her comment was more about the line between countries had started to blur with the advantage of technology. And we were feeling very connected and asking ourselves how we take good advantage of that. And then all of a sudden it went crazy. Did it feel like all of a sudden it went crazy to you, Denise, or to your friends? Or were you a little bit more aware of us heading toward the test of democracy that we're having now?
It kind of felt crazy. And then, geographically, all of a sudden the borders were like, can't travel, mm-hmm. And a lot of people, because of COVID and the different ways that globally everyone's handling it, we see a different way in the United States. And I think a lot of people were like, yeah, close those borders up, because whereas we were kind of shutting down, you guys were like, no, we're staying open. And we're like, oh, and it really did feel kind of sudden, like a huge door closed and like the border closed.
But for the first time, I think, Denise, people were closing their door to us instead of us to them.
Yeah, and a lot of Canadians were like, keep it closed, keep them contained. And we've never been like that before. And the fact that, I can't come and visit you. Yeah. It's crazy. That is crazy. But, it's just bizarre in terms of divine timing to have the election, the unrest, and have a pandemic on top of it. And just to see how everyone is handling it, it all comes together. So we kind of feel a little more comfortable having certain things closed, and that's never been the case before.
Yeah, Denise, the whole world is kind of busy right now. But you know what? On the personal level, people are finding ways to really not just entertain themselves, but sustain themselves. What are you doing to keep your sanity and to keep your, I mean, you're one of the most positive people I know, which is why I love you being in my crew. What are you doing to keep yourself positive?
Ooh, well, 2020 has been kind of a crazy year because, I live by myself. And when you go through a lockdown by yourself, you have to find ways to be really solid. And like I say, I'm, and no judgment, but I wasn't doing puzzles or baking bread because, the carbs don't live well with me. But what I have been doing first and foremost is connecting. So connecting with my friends and family, and especially one of the things that I really realize is you can't make assumptions about how people are because everyone's in a different situation. And someone might look at someone like myself and say, wow, you were alone, like, ooh. But you know what? That's where I found my power. That's where I found real happiness. But I've been doing a lot of writing. As you know, I'm a writer, and I've been doing a lot of writing and a lot of sharing and connectivity with everyone to really check in on their situation because we've never gone through something like this before. And, some people are surviving and some people are thriving, and you really don't know, and you really can't make assumptions on that. So for me, it was sort of creating a little oasis on my patio. And even when it was cold out in April, like I set it up and I got my blankets because, it's still cold here in Canada in April. And I would just sit outside and do a lot of writing. And writing's my therapy. So that was really my way.
And are you writing tap, 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 or are you writing cursive, cursive, cursive?
I handwrite. Journals upon journals upon journals. I type out a lot of quotations because I love quotes and I love quotes that land with me. But for me, I have to write.
Yeah. And, you talk about connecting with family and friends and checking that people are okay. One of the things that I'm learning is that other people are enjoying the same journey I am. Even though we're distant, the intimacy of the technology and the social platforms we're using, wow, they can kind of expose you a lot more than just that phone call or that text or that stop by hello that we used to have before COVID, huh?
Oh yeah. And it's FaceTiming. FaceTiming is, I don't know, the world is really, really small actually at this point with the technology that we have. So one of my things that I like to do is check in with my niece almost daily. She lives alone as well. And you just—
That's so crazy to think of her being adult enough to live alone. I still think of her as this tiny.
I know. She's turning 24 next month. And, I just want to make sure she's okay. And she checks in with me to make sure I'm okay. So you never know when that FaceTime call is going to come in. And sometimes, I'm ready for it and sometimes I'm not. But it's really about, I think, because we were all locked down separately, you had to find a way to connect. And yeah, everyone sort of got into Zoom calls early on and we were wearing funny hats and this or that. But then I found that kind of fell by the wayside and then you had to get deeper. Mm-hmm. And then you find out how people are feeling. And there's a huge divide between fear and love. And you have to sort of find your way of where you are on that scale. And you have to just be very, very generous with when you are in your power and somebody needs it and you have to give it. And so that's what I do because I'm a very positive person, as you know. And yeah, we all have our moments, but not everyone can find the light in this situation. So if you can help somebody find that light, I think it's worth it.
Yeah, one of the things that I heard the other day, and I heard it said by the person I'm referencing, was that they had early in life experienced a lot of depression, and they were finding that in a weird way, having to go home with, with this COVID environment, and then jump on the FaceTimes with people. They were actually using that as a tool toward their own evolution, toward their own healing. And that was kind of interesting to me because this was a relatively young person. I can imagine that a lot of young people are figuring out how these tools that we're using can become part of a healing process, regardless of whether it's depression or harm or, whatever. I can imagine they're feeling that, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And as well, when you look at social media, and I say this to my leadership team, you have to be a seer, meaning you really have to see people. And when you look at social media, I look at some of the things that my staff post, because that will actually tell you more than what they're saying. Because when they come into a morning meeting, for example, and they're on Zoom or they're on Teams or whatever it is, you see a perception, you see maybe what they want to show you, but you can really tell a lot about what's happening with someone through social media and what they post. And you have to see it and really address things when you see them. Like you really, and I think I said this to you before, 2020 for me is all about vision, perfect vision. And it's really about seeing people and seeing their situations. And I think I've been very surprised this year in seeing some of my friends that I made assumptions about, perhaps, or even family that I made assumptions about that, yeah, they're okay, they're good. And a lot of times I think people have made those assumptions about me as well. Oh, she's good, I don't have to check in on her. Yeah, you do. Sometimes you have to check in on some of your strongest friends because you don't know. And so social media is very, very interesting on how people project, I think.
We started earlier talking about the role of strong women.
Yeah.
Men are vulnerable too, and I've seen men be in some ways vulnerable that I never dreamed they were. To your point of checking in on everybody, you're nodding. Have you seen this too?
Absolutely. And one of the things I love about empowerment, because I have staff that are male and female, but men traditionally in our society aren't allowed to be vulnerable, which I think is such a disservice, because they're internalizing all of their fears, their emotions, all of it. And as we really truly see who people are in a pandemic, it's almost like women are allowed to be messy and men aren't. They have to be strong. And that's crazy. Why should they? They should be allowed to be as messy as we are. But and hopefully we're seeing more barriers sort of being broken, and sort of that whole socialization really being looked at. I mean, I have two older brothers, so I watch how they go through life. And my father was a very kind and vulnerable man, meaning he had no problem showing love. He had no problem embracing people and being really truthful. And that's why everyone loved him. So yeah, I would like to see men get a bit more vulnerable, a bit more messy, because it's about being human, right? And they should be allowed to be as human as they possibly can be.
When we come out of this COVID, and there are promising signs that we'll get vaccines, the infrastructure and the delivery system may determine when you and I actually get one, but the promise is there. What have we learned from this? Not just you, but what do you think? What do you see right now that we've learned from this? And what do you hope we've learned from this? Which can be two very different things?
Oh, I think they're two very different things. What I hope we have learned is to really drill down to what's important. And that, to me, it's really drilling down to human connectivity, and really understanding your priorities, and, you know, really looking at health and happiness. And I think, you know, really just awakening to just being a raw, truthful human being. I don't know if that's what's actually happening. You see a divide. But that's what I hope people see more of. And again, that 2020 vision of who we are and really what's important. At the end of the day, what's important. And then it's not, you know, money and, you know, cars and all that stuff that we have. It really comes down to health and your family and your friends, and understanding that that's true wealth.
Yeah, wow. Do you think we learned anything about our environment and respect for our use of, you know, products and stuff? I mean, most of us are getting stuff by delivery today instead of going out and picking it up. Do you think we've learned anything on the more practical or pragmatic side of how we live? Or do we just forget it and have a party after this COVID war?
Oh,
do we hit the streets and celebrate and burn up the earth again?
Well, you know what? I think everyone's had to really live eyes wide open. I mean, I'm definitely, as an extrovert, it's so hard for me to be in lockdown. You know, I'm dying to get on a plane. You know, I'm dying to, there's so much of the planet I still
But
need.
when you get on that plane, will you use one square or two?
All right, I'll use one square. How about that? I think hopefully everyone's really had to stop, you know, like, and when you look at lockdown, everyone had to sort of stop and really take a really hard look in inventory of their life, of who you are and what you have, and be grateful for all of that, and being grateful for just the simplicity of being healthy, you know, and making sure that your family is healthy. It really comes down to that, and trying to find that happiness. And, you know, I think we needed to quiet the noise.
You know, when you talk about gratitude and for simple health, which is huge. I remember once sitting at the foot of a teacher who said, the state that everybody looks for is happy. We can't interpret what happy means for people, and what looks horrible or sad for us can be happy for others. But I think back to Irene right now, and the one thing you get from Mama G is that she's happy. Now, she's always been cynically happy because she has that British wit about her.
But, there it is. Yes.
But I think also that she was a person who did live in gratitude for everything. Your mom was a kid during World War II, right?
Absolutely.
Did she share memories of what that was like?
Oh, yeah, all the time. And one of the interesting things about dementia is you still retain that long-term memory. So she loves to talk about growing up, the war, and, like, you know, we may not talk about what happened an hour ago, but she certainly has a lot of stories that way. And, you know, she would talk about the fact that they would only get a certain amount of eggs per week. And, you know, what my grandmother did with that type of thing. Or, you know, she was the one, because she was the oldest, she was the one sent to the store to pick up rations. And when you grow up with rations, it's a completely different mentality, right? Because
you don't throw old lettuce out. You don't let it get old, do you?
No, you don't. And she taught us that, you know, good or bad, you clean your plate, you know, you don't waste anything. And they, you know, and also too, it was, they kind of lived in fear. Like she was always saying that she and her girlfriends would like sit and talk like, what would happen if the enemies captured them? What would they do?
Mhm.
And, you know, it's when you grow up that way with rations and lack and fear, you have to find a way to live as big as possible. And if anyone knows my mother, she's always ready to party. That's all she wants to do. She's never in her room. She's always out. She wants to live as big as possible in whatever way. So this virus and pandemic is killing her because it's killing her social life. But you learn to live in the moment. And that is also a gift that dementia can give you because you really only have that moment. You learn to live in the moment and you learn to live as big as possible. And that's something that is a huge takeaway for me because, you know, that's how I live. I want to always try and be present and in the moment, but also live as big as I can every single day. And I think that comes from a place of rationing and lack.
And not comparing your big, and you talked earlier about getting into yourself, not comparing it to what the social media platforms are saying big looks like. Big to you was really a part of your day in April when it was still cold, wrapped in a blanket and journaling. That was big for you and a gift you gave yourself and one that you could feel grateful for.
Yeah, absolutely. And, oh, go ahead.
I was thinking about your grandma and her chewing everything 100 times. My husband said you had to chew everything 36 times.
Oh.
And I said, are you counting teeth? 32, 36? You know what he
was all about efficiency. So
well, here's the thing. He said his mother taught him that if you chewed it longer, it was more nourishing to you. You felt it better. You ate slower. You got full better. And that came from a point of rationing, of having less and doing more with it, literally for your body. And your whole conversation has been around less doesn't have to mean you live smaller.
Oh, absolutely not. You know, lockdown is a mindset. And you can either adopt that mindset or not. And you can either lock yourself down or you can live big within your environment. And so it's all about what you choose, right? And one of the things that I do every day is I do a grounding and I choose the energy that I want to live in that day. And I choose how I want to be and I choose how I want to live my day. And it is a choice for me and it's a choice for everyone. So you know, if you want it's a tough time right now, obviously. And I'm not trying to trivialize anything. It is a pandemic, but you have to choose how you want to live each and every day. And so you can be in the mindset of lockdown or you can be in the mindset of gratitude, right? It's up to you. And you can make that choice. And once you make that choice, you're not allowing the environment, you're not allowing the media, you're not allowing other people's energy to affect you. And I think it's really, really important to do that because, you know, I think that we've seen this pandemic is mentally exhausting and you have to remain solid. So you have to do what you need to do. I do what I need to do. And if anyone, you know, sort of seeks that kind of energy, I give it freely because it is mentally tough.
Wow. That is so beautiful.
Don't you think?
That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And you talked earlier about, you know, making assumptions about people and seeing how they are in this moment we're in. Seeing who the survivors and who the thrivers will be through it.
Mm-hmm.
all of that's really new for us. And that's why I wanted to take a moment and just journey back to the things that your mom had shared with you about her life and growing up through World War II. Because, you know, we're all feeling a little bit of that in this generation and in this moment right now. Maybe we don't hear the bombs dropping outside, and maybe many of us aren't using blackout curtains, but emotionally,
Yes.
a lot of people are feeling that threat as real today as
They
folk
are.
did in World War II, huh?
Yeah, they are. And we're not out of it. So, and as you know, here in Toronto, as we go into our new lockdown started yesterday, here we go again. And
What are the rules around your lockdown right now?
pretty much most things are closed. Gyms closed down. Really only essential services are honored. I can't go to a restaurant and eat in or in a patio. Now, again, it's getting pretty cold, but we were all shivering under heaters and patios because we all wanted to be outside. So now it's, you know, takeout, pickup. It's basically going back to kind of the beginning. In March, trying to lock it down. We are restricted in terms of our social bubbles and our households. And
Were you guys spiking up?
Yeah, we were.
So folks kind of felt the ease when they came out and took it a bit far.
Yeah, and you know, we enjoyed a really great summer. We kind of came out of lockdown, and if you know anything about Canada, it's a lot about weather, and we enjoy summer like there's no tomorrow because we truly appreciate beautiful weather and everybody's out. So we really sort of enjoyed that, and we were actually doing very, very well. You know, numbers were low, and then I think once school started and lots of different things, we started spiking again. And our government is really trying to just hit at it the best way that they know how. So we'll see. We're in a lockdown for 28 days, so it's just before Christmas. When this is probably going to be lifted, or it will carry on. And again, nobody knows. We don't even know what December's looking like. And all my friends and family were kind of discussing Christmas to see what that looks like for everyone. You know, what that holiday looks like, because that's always been about getting together and family. So what does that look like? So who knows? Who knows?
Well, you know, my mom, we talked with my mom about the holidays as well. And in particular, Christmas, to your mention. Christmas for us was always Christmas in North Carolina, which year to year is different, but sometimes we get a really good snow for 2 or 3 days. And we were just thinking on, you know, past Christmases, my siblings and I kind of Zoom with her, right? And we do Sunday dinners by Zoom.
Oh, do you? That's great.
Yeah, girl, it's great sometimes. Sometimes it's kind of funky, just like around the table, it can get wild, and people are unedited. But mom is so funny because she was saying, well, you know what y'all are really saying you miss is the holly, but you still got the holy. So you can have a holiday or a holiday. I'll have my holiday and see y'all for a holiday later. And it's kind of like the spirit of your conversation. What is holy to us? Is it the family? Is it the love? Is it the health? You know, or like the healthcare workers who are asking out, and I paraphrase, you know, you guys, you can either sit alone at Thanksgiving so you can be together next Christmas, or you can, you know, go out there and just wreck it for everybody. Everybody's coming from a different place with it. Everybody is. But you seem to be coming from a really good place in terms of not just your mental health, which is so important, but your physical health. You're looking fabulous. I want to steal whatever color you're using. Don't tell me that grew out that way, because I've seen you before. It's just gorgeous. I mean, is Amazon busy? Are you having like color delivered? Are you exercising? How are you keeping this physical thing so tight, girl?
Oh, and thank you so much.
And it sounds, hey, look, it sounds so frivolous right now to say, but I think it does feed to one's spiritual and emotional health too, you know.
Well, it does. And, you know, it was interesting way back when the pandemic started and, you know, everyone was sort of in lockdown at home. And there came a time when I was just like, you know what? I can't be looking this messy all the time. It doesn't even feel like me. But one of the things that I do on a daily basis that I truly, truly believe in, as you know, is I train. So I do weights. I'm so grateful that I made the choice of getting a Peloton a year ago before any of this even happened, because that beautiful bike has really kept me solid. But, you know, I think that health encompasses your mind, it encompasses your body, it encompasses everything. And I know for me, when I'm exercising on a daily basis and I'm moving my body and I'm getting all those beautiful chemicals, it helps ground me and keep me mentally healthy. So I've never stopped that. And, you know, I don't really enjoy lifting weights in my condo living room. It's really not something that is really fun, but you do what you got to do. And I was really looking forward to our gyms, you know, reopening, and then they got closed and it's up and down. But, you know, you have to do what you need to do to be healthy. And, you know, as much as we talk about hand washing and sanitization and all of those good things, I don't think we talk enough about getting enough sleep, about eating the right foods and moving our bodies so that our immune systems are tight. So that's one of the ways that I keep myself healthy every single day.
What's your beauty kit? What does it consist of?
Happiness.
I love it. I love it.
Honestly,
my husband once said to me, you know, I was talking about going on some crazy diet once, and he said to me, there is nothing sexier than a healthy, happy woman.
It's true.
To him.
Yeah. And honestly, in the last couple of years that I've been writing about and really delving into self-love and happiness, I don't think I've ever looked better. I really don't. And it really, you know, it sounds sort of cliche and all of that, but like if you're happy, that's the way it is. Now, that said, of course, I'm going to get my dye job and all that good stuff to keep.
Are you doing it yourself? Are you doing your hair
yourself?
yourself?
No. Oh God, no. And actually hair salons have probably closed down too, which is scary, but no, I can't do this. Crazy. Yeah.
Oh girl, go on and say I woke up like this.
Yeah, I wish.
Well, it's working. Look, we got to do 4 for 4. Okay. So all our family know, I'm going to ask you 4 questions and you're going to give me 4 answers to each. Okay.
4 answers to the question, or
each question, 4 answers to each question. And my first question is, if you could invite anyone you wanted to dinner from any period in time, they can be dead or alive and free of COVID, who would be at your dinner table? Anybody, Denise. And why?
And why? First and foremost, my dad, who passed away 13 years ago, because that's pretty obvious. I want him at my table. Just because I miss him terribly, even though he's with me every day. I would say my Uncle Bernie, because he's probably the funniest person that I've ever encountered. And oh man, I mean, you know, beyond all the things that he taught us as kids, he's just, he'll keep you laughing through the entire dinner. I would have Gracie at my table.
You'd have her in the kitchen cooking too, right?
Well, yeah, and you know, because I wanted the, you know, Yorkshire pudding the size of my head, and yeah, you know, it's not so much thinking about sort of historical characters and things like that. It's really about, and the last person I would have at my table was my sister-in-law, Daniela, who passed away, again, for her kitchen skills, because man, she could cook. But I miss her terribly.
Did she cook Greek or did she cook across the continent?
Italian. She was Northern Italian, and pasta, just really simple Italian food was beautiful. So yeah, you know what? It's the people that were so dear to me that I've lost. I would.
You'd have them back.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
You did 1 for 4. Let's go 2 for 4. Okay.
Yeah.
What books would you recommend people read that you've read yourself, and why? We're all hunkered down. It's a good time for reading. So you get to tell us, look, universe, you're reading these books and this is why. Because when we come out, I want you to have read these books. What are those for and why?
Ooh, I just finished Untamed by Glennon Doyle, which I loved, which is really about female empowerment. I give people the 4 Agreements a lot. It's such a simple, small book. It's so powerful. When I used to work as a life coach, that was one thing that I gave each and every client of mine. And it's interesting because I gave it to someone a couple of years ago, and I hadn't read it in a long time. And I said, you know what, you read it, I'm going to read it, and then we can talk about it. That person never read it. I read it again, and it meant so much more to me in my 50s than it ever did in my 30s.
I was going to ask you, when you read it again after that, it gave more, right?
It did. And I was journaling and journaling and journaling, especially the assumptions part, and especially not taking things personally. And it's such a beautiful power. It's such a simple book, but if you can live that way, you will be happy. And it's all about happiness. I just read a great book.
And you know, one thing I say, Denise, it's a simple book. Simple doesn't always mean easy. You said something earlier that I think has to be a writer to this book before anybody reads it. It's about the decision. You said you wake up and you decide what state that day is going to be for you, how you're going to be in that day. I do think that reading that book, you have to be prepared to make the decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And the individual that I'm speaking about that I gave that book to, they're either going to read it or they're not. I can't make that choice. I mean, I can buy the book and give that book away to someone, but you have to make the choice to say, I really want to jump in.
When you life coached people, have any of those folks come back to you during this period and said, hey, Denise, I know you're busy and you're doing your thing differently now, but.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I stay in contact with a lot of the people, because, you know, life coaching is so intimate. It's someone is basically saying, I need to get from here to here and I can't do that alone. Or I feel I can't do that alone. They can do it, but they feel they can't do it alone. And I really need someone to hold me accountable and take me from A to B. And one of my favorite stories actually was, and I'll be real quick with this, but I coached someone into a new profession. And that new profession was going from working in a warehouse to becoming a customs officer. And here I am in line at the airport with my passport, and I'm waiting, and I look and I see her waiting, you know, and I kept jockeying for position. Oh, go ahead of me, until I could be the next one called for her. And I walked up and I slammed my passport down and I'm like, hello. And she's like, oh my God. And it was such a beautiful moment. And my mother was with me, and she turned to my mother and she said, she's the reason that I'm sitting here right now. And that meant more to me than anything, because she and I worked together to change her life.
And she read the book.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, it's a quick read, but woo, it's gonna turn you upside down. So that's one of my favorite books of all time.
What we can do too is maybe after the holiday, we can sit down and we can read the book together here and share it with our friends how that works. Yeah.
Love to. And even if you break it down by chapter,
right.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
Another great book that I've read recently was called Shift Happens. And that's all about happiness. That's all about finding personal happiness. I just got a book given to me actually by my brother Gary, who is a voracious reader, and he loves.
Oh, I think I know the one you're going to say. Have you got it handy? Can you hold it up?
Yeah, let me grab it for you. I just got 2 books delivered to me. So this one is Positive Intelligence. That's
the one Gary is pushing.
The one Gary mentioned at our last meeting, and he's all over this. So I took the little quiz, so I kind of got an idea of where I stand and what my big saboteurs are. And then I just ordered this book called The Body Is Not an Apology. And, you know, because I do a lot of empowerment and a lot of motivational work privately with a private group of ladies to really overcome body issues and to live in your own power. So I'm really excited to read this one because, you know, I think that we hold ourselves back so much in terms of what we think we have to look like and how we have to be. And if we can get past that, we can actually just live in the moment and be happy with the beautiful body that we were given.
When people look at you, Denise, I'm sure they think, oh yeah, right. She's one to talk. Look at her. She has no issues. Everything is perfect. You had a journey.
Oh, huge journey. So we're coming up to 15 years. So as January 1st, 2021 will be 15 years of my weight loss and body transformation journey, which encompassed losing 110 pounds.
But it wasn't the look you were going for. It was the spirit you were going for and the ability to say, I set a goal and I accomplished it. I remember a conversation you had where you were saying all those years that you thought it was how you looked that was the issue. And you found out it was actually how you felt about yourself.
Yes.
That was the freeing factor and enable the change.
And I don't necessarily subscribe anymore to, I know how I train on a daily basis and I eat the way I do to be strong, right? Society may want you to look a certain way, but, and the other thing too, I thought that journey for me was really sort of definitive of who I am. And it really, I've come to a place now where it's like, that was just part of my growth. And, you know, you can look outwardly like society may want you to look. That doesn't mean you're happy.
You can be a mess inside and look perfect outside. Or like in business, when we talk about are you a swan? You know, you look elegant and graceful on the water and underneath everything is just paddling like crazy away. You can't afford to miss a stroke. I think it's so important for our friends and our family to know that you had to embrace you first.
Yes.
In order to be able to do all this stuff that you're doing.
Yeah. And, you know, I made a decision. And again, when you talk about choice, I made a decision 15 years ago. I was in a great place in terms of, I guess I had just gotten married at that time. And, you know, I had a great job. I had everything outwardly that you would think would make me happy. But I was so desperately unhappy inwardly. And I really had to make a choice of really embracing either just staying where I was and working on that, or make a change. And I made a change. And a lot of it was achieving goals, but a lot of it was just changing into who I really and truly was.
And did it feel like fun at first? You know, there are people who say, what is it they say, Denise? Don't live to eat, eat to live. How do you make that shift? You talk about shifts.
Ooh, in the beginning, there's nothing fun. Well, I will say there's something great about, actually losing weight can be quite exciting because you are constantly hitting little goals and things like that. I don't weigh myself anymore because it's too emotional. I have an emotional attachment to that. And even though I don't let outside forces affect my day, I don't need to get on a scale and have that define my day. I don't do that.
Well, 100 pounds is a long journey.
It is.
Once you've done that, maybe I get where you're coming from.
Yeah. And one of the things I used to do is every time I went down 10 pounds, I would write myself a letter from that place. Because I ever thought if I got to a place where I was gaining it all back, I could read these letters from myself. And I've never had to open them. But it's such an emotional journey. And, losing weight isn't hard. I mean, it is, but the hard part is changing your life and maintaining it. Because all the best things in life, and I'm wildly extroverted, so everything that is social revolves around food and drink. Mm-hmm. All of it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's every day, and again, that word choice keeps coming back to me. Every day you make a choice, and I make a choice of what I eat, how hard I train, and making that choice to be happy. And it's 15 years.
Yeah, girl. Hey, look, celebrate that, right?
Thank you. I do celebrate it. I'm proud of it.
Well, that's 2 for 4. Let's go 3 for 4. Okay.
Sure.
What 4 listenings are you having? Music we're talking about, and why, that you recommend to our family? So a lot of people are listening to Marvin Gaye, What's Going On Again, the whole album, because they feel it's so socially relevant and promising to them, puts them intentional again. That's been popping up a lot. But I know you come from a different kind of music genre. What 4 artists or pieces of music are you listening to right now? And why are you sharing that with our family? Remember, this is what you want people listening to before COVID opens up.
Well, so the first one I want to say, and I have to preface all of this with, I am so old school, like I am so 80s alternative. That is just who I am, and I gravitate back to that all the time. So I play Prince a lot.
Trish is gonna love you.
Yes. And I'm sure Trish has done the Prince spin on Peloton. And it's funny, when I get on that bike and I say, you know what, it's always a joy. But when I really want to ride for joy versus, accomplishing and hitting PRs and training, I put on the Prince spin because I love every song. And I grind it out to that. It's wonderful. And so I've been listening a lot to Prince. And I guess, honestly, like I'm really not one for like kind of what's new and what's relevant these days. Cause I always go back to what gets me dancing. And I think we need to be doing more of that, even if it's in your living room. So like Depeche Mode, I love to dance to. New Order, I love to dance to. I'm just trying to think of, there's certain songs that I play over and over again as I'm in the car. And trying to think of one of the ones that I play, Billie Eilish.
Yeah. New but old soul.
Yeah, and just she's got it.
Yeah, and she's had quite a journey to be so young too. Wow.
I know. I can't believe she's the age that she is. So talented and so grounded.
But you know, each of the artists you mentioned, whether it's Depeche Mode or Prince or whoever, your artists really have journeys. You know, each has a journey. If you just read about them and read truth about them,
yes,
it kind of fits with what you're saying. Is Peloton the new Facebook?
I don't know. I mean, people like to joke that it's kind of like this crazy kind of cult-like thing, but you know what? It's all about connection, and it's all about moving forward in a collective energy.
Like energy.
Like energy. And it's, like I say, it has saved me living and being locked down in a condo. And I'm so grateful that I made the choice that I did, because it shifts my energy every single day.
Did you get your Peloton before COVID?
Yeah, I got it November 30th. And so I'm coming up to a year, and I can't believe I had sort of the foresight to do that, because, you know, there was probably a time where people were trying to order one and they couldn't get one because everyone was working out from home. But there's so much available. You know, I follow a lot of fitness individuals. There's so much available in just moving your body or dancing or walking or get outside, walk some hills. There's so much that you can do, and it so shifts your energy, and it is so needed right now. So that's 3 for 4.
Yeah, I mean, this is the world we live in, girls. Yeah, so it's going to be in our conversation anyway. This is the world we live in. But I agree with you.
Trish reached out to me when she wanted to get a Peloton, and I set her up. So.
Oh, cool. But, you know, have you been on it every day since you got it? Have you missed a day?
Oh, yeah. You know, you do need rest days, but one of the great things is it also has cardio dance. So on days where I really need to rest sort of the muscles that I use to spin, I dance. It has meditation. It has strength, all kinds of things. So
does it give you the opportunity of a Pilates experience? You know, I'm in that point now where I want stretch, you know?
Yeah, it has yoga. But
you've been a yoga fan for longer than Peloton.
Yes, absolutely. But one of the things that I did as soon as I could was I cycled outside. So as much as I do love my Peloton, it's wonderful. But, you know, this summer, and we're so lucky here in Canada, we had such a beautiful summer. Oh, my God. I would get on my bike, my mountain bike, and there's a certain ride that
You really do live in gratitude. You're grateful for Canadian weather.
Oh, my God. Well, trust me, we love good weather. I mean, you guys, you know, I've always said that when I used to visit my parents in LA, when I used to visit you in LA, it's always nice. So you don't even like really
You don't have to plan a picnic.
Yeah. So yeah, so every single day that I could ride outside, I took that opportunity. And there's lots of trails, because, you know, I live in the beach. There's lots of trails, and there's one particular that I used to call my therapy ride. And you know, I got outside. So now that it's cold, I'll be back on my Peloton because I've, you know, put my bike away. But you know what, training, walking, anything that you can do. I know you do a lot of walking around your property. You have to shift that mindset. You have to shift that mindset, and exercise will do that for you.
You live in a condo. Do you guys have a protocol about hallways and entry exit during COVID?
Yes. So mandatory masking. So as soon as you enter my building, you're wearing a mask, which is tough. Sometimes I creep down to, the garbage chute without my mask on and run back. But we are trying to be as responsible.
Are you stairs or elevator?
I'm both, because I'm on the second floor. So I do both. We're trying to honor everyone within the building as much as possible. But that's everywhere indoors here in Toronto, is you have to wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, we did 3 for 4, Denise. We're at the magic moment, 4 for 4.
Can't wait.
Now, this is probably going to be shoe-in for you. You don't have to feel limited to 4, but you got to give at least 4 bits of advice from Denise for the world, and particular our family. Remember, our family, most of them are in their 30s. We got 20 to 40-ish to 50-ish, but many fit in that zone. All of us can benefit from good advice, regardless of where we are. What 4 pieces of advice do you give to our family that you want them to follow in and or out of COVID?
Ooh, 4 pieces of advice.
And why? Everything
why.
has why.
You know what? First one is mindset. So important. Don't let the day happen to you. You need to, a lot of times I do my grounding in the car on the way to work, but now that I'm at home, I start my day that way. Choose your positive mindset, and be in charge. Be in charge of who you are and what energy you want to live in and how you want to have your day. Forgiveness. I'm going to say forgiveness for yourself and for everybody else. And you have to understand that during this pandemic and post-pandemic, forgive all of the shoulds and assumptions and all of that. And just, if you can forgive yourself and you can forgive others, that is a beautiful way to live. I would say, connect to everyone in your friend and family zone. It's so important. Again, that is your wealth. So, and really ensure everyone's okay. Be a warrior for everybody. And really prioritize your health, because without your health, you don't have anything. And that's everything. That is mind, body, and spirit. So whatever that means to you, if you are solid in mind, body, and spirit, you are solid. And we need all of us to be solid right now to get through this. And what'll happen is when you get into those disciplines, once we come out of it, then you're already in that discipline. So
I think that is so awesome. I think that's advice that people probably want to hear right now. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a new reality. It just has to be an affirmed one.
Yes,
and not knowing what's real, not knowing what's next. I think there's beyond comfort in hearing someone share with you what's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sister girl, niece, daughter, niece, you've been real on this one, and I love you so much.
I love you too, and thank you for having me on. It's been like such an honor for me.
Take good care of yourself. We need you. We love you.
Love you too. Hope to see you soon.
Hey, yeah, but look,
that'd be nice.
Regardless, we're going to get back. We're going to take that book chapter by chapter, and we're going to offer it out to folks. I think that was a great idea for us to follow through on. But for right now, from my heart to your home, lots of love.
Love to you too.